Everyone, hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. This is Julien Serrano-O'Neil and Zachary Heneden of the Last Shot podcast, powered by the Last Shot Media Group. And
Yeah.
we have such an exciting conversation today. This is following the heels of our coverage that we did in Tribeca, the film festival. But today, we have someone very special here to talk about something that I think is so important, especially in the media space. And that is an opportunity today to talk with Eli Morris. And Eli serves as the Director of Strategy and Programs for the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So we're gonna really get into a couple of questions that, we think is important to elevate in the media space in film, but we also want to talk a little bit about, some of the experience that you have in your role and what your thought is about what's going on. And so I have the pleasure of asking the first question. And so that is the Vancouver Queer Film Festival is entering its 38th year. When you look at where queer cinema was when the festival began versus where it is now, what feels like the biggest victory and what do you feel like is still unfinished?
Oh, that's a great question. When I think about 38 years, I mean, when the first edition of the festival was literally bed sheets in a lesbian's living room. That's where the films were projected. So coming from like that informal community organized event to what we are today, 87 films, big venues across the city. We open and close in the Vancouver Playhouse. Um, I mean, that alone just goes to show how much like incredible progress there has been. When
Wow.
we started, queer people were not telling queer stories. Queer representation was very, very limited. Coming off the back of the Hays Code, where queer people had to be villains or killed. Um, we've come like a really long way to now having mainstream positive representation. And all of the films at our festival are queer made, so having those stories be authentic, I think, is massive. Which is yeah, so cool to like look back on and reflect. In
Right.
terms of where do we still have to go? I think there's still a lot of intersectionality that is missing from particularly mainstream media. And I think we really try to fill a lot of those gaps where folks who are still not seeing themselves represented on screen, we want to make a space for them where they can come and see themselves reflected in media that they're watching. Um, yeah.
No, that's a great perspective, and it does show, telling where this started and where you are now. I think that is a sign that there's progression in the right direction, right? I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day, and the portrayal of the LGBTQIA community in media came up, and they mentioned, especially when it came to their sexuality, they said, how they identify and things like that. They said, well, growing up, I thought there was something wrong with myself because whenever love was portrayed on this TV screen, it was a hetero relationship, and love is so much more than that, right? So being able to see this space where all these different creators can come share their stories, I think that is just so important. Zachary, did you want to take the next question?
Yes, yes, yes. This year's theme is a seat at the table. When you first began developing the 2026 festival, what did the phrase mean to you personally, and when did you know it was the right idea for this year? Hmm. Yeah, we were having a lot of like conversations in the lead up to the festival about, what do we feel like is going to be relevant for folks. and what is kind of emerging from the zeitgeist. Like what are the films telling us that, we need to hear and like listen to closely. And this idea of everybody has a seat at the table and this active like communing and gathering where we can all feel like nourished by the content that we're watching and feeling nourished by even just the act of gathering together felt really important. I think like a lot of folks are, wanting community right now and really feeling disconnected from each other. And I think there's this feeling of, the pendulum swinging backwards and a feeling of like, needing to brace or like feeling like we have to. And so we wanted to create a space where we're not bracing, we're just like sitting at a table, enjoying a meal with our closest friends. Like that's the vibe that we want to create, something really nourishing and connective.
Right.
And I could totally understand that since, there's certain spaces, especially in the United States, that are getting, impeded upon. So this is a very, very important. So yes.
Yeah, and you said something that I think is one of the reasons why we kind of started our podcast, and that was to create space for all kind of creators and content, whatever your story is, tell that story. And so in in this project, and this festival, how do you all and kind of go about selecting these creators that get to come and share their labor of love with everyone?
It's a very intentional, thoughtful process. And each year we make little tweaks to, better serve the community. This year we had a programming fellowship where we brought on three emerging creators, or curators, sorry, to help us curate the vision of the festival. And then we also brought back our volunteer screening committee, which is a group of 15 community members. Some of them were from our original screening committee like 15 years ago, and then lots of new folks as
Wow.
well. Yeah, it was really cool. And so, really like opening up and being like, we actually want more voices at the table because, I think we do have such a diversity of voices in the community and wanting to make sure that we're bringing in as many people as possible who can speak to the different corners of our community felt really important. So we have like a process where there's, pre-screening that happens, films get watched, then they get rewatched, then they're
Yeah.
discussed. And sometimes it comes down to very funny things. Like this year, I remember I watched like some incredible films all about like transmasculine pregnant people. As a transmasculine
Mm,
person, I was like, this is fantastic. We have so much great representation, but we were like, we probably can't have multiple films about a transmasculine person going through a pregnancy. We kind of have to sometimes filter it out for almost silly reasons. But
right.
yeah, most of the time we're really trying to focus on authentic storytelling, people whose stories don't get told very often, um, and like stories that really move us as programmers.
Right. And
Okay. So,
so
oh,
go ahead, Zachary.
okay. So, your team described this year's approach as expanding the table rather than narrowing it. What does that mean when you're actually sitting in a programming room making difficult decisions about what gets included?
Yeah, great question. So when we're in those meetings, I mean, now there's more people in the meetings to start with, so they do take a lot longer, which is kind of really beautiful actually, because I think it becomes more thoughtful when you spend longer on the decisions. And then we're often referring back to the notes made by other screeners. So, well, what did so and
Mm,
so say about this? And then if someone flags something about a film and then we'll then go and research it. Or if we're not sure about something, we'll get somebody else to watch it again. So there's yeah, just more people being involved in the watching of the films and the discussions about them, and yeah, taking multiple perspectives into consideration rather than kind of one dominant voice making all the choices.
Okay, and so that's great actually, and it kind of really makes me think about this next question, and so I kind of jumped around a little bit here, but the next question is the festival opens with ecosystems, not empires. Seven shorts imagining queer futures through care, kinship, and collective liberation. Why was this story something that you all wanted to make sure that the audience encountered as they opened up in the festival?
Yeah. So this title came from Otter, our
Mm,
program manager, and everybody on the team just felt very drawn to the messaging of ecosystems, not empires. I think the
mm,
way that we are operating internally is, somewhat inspired by like the state of the world. So we're seeing this consolidation of power, and we're seeing that consolidation of power being really harmful to our community and lots of other marginalized communities. And so,
mm,
when we think about empires and how harmful they are, and, the settler colonial projects that a lot of our nations have been created under. And we think of like, what is the antidote to this harm that is occurring? And it's, focusing on the whole ecosystem, not just like one singular power, but how like so many creatures are necessary for a healthy ecosystem. And so
mm.
thinking about like sharing power through like, we moved to a shared leadership model for the organization, sharing power by bringing more voices into our programming team. Um, yeah. Did I
Wow.
finish that thought or did I stop mid-sentence? Kind of got lost
we
there.
no, we understand that can kind of happen when you're passionate about it, and it sounds like you have a really passionate team that is putting in the time to make this thing work. What is that like? Like, can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to collaborate with your peers in this process?
Oh, it's great. Like I was in the executive director role before this role now, and I love being in a shared leadership role way better. It is, yeah, so much more sustainable. It's so much more fun. It makes our programming so much more impactful. And it means we're able to like better serve the communities that yeah, that we want to serve. Um, so yeah, day to day, I mean, we do have to like communicate a lot to make sure that we're, who's doing what and how's that going. And sometimes, I think I'm sure people get sick of me because I'm like, can I just get your thoughts on something? I'm sure somebody out there is like, just make a choice on your own, Eli. But
Right.
so, there's drawbacks to any, method of working, but I think it really works for our team to be more collaborative. I think people, want to have a voice and they want to feel like they're meaningfully shaping the work that we're doing and they're meaningfully shaping the organization. And so it was definitely, yeah, has been the right choice for us to move to a more collaborative way of working.
That's awesome. Zachary, would you like to take the next one?
Yes, sir. So, what was it about Apollo that made you and the programming team choose it as this year's centerpiece presentation? And how do you think the film connects to this festival's broader theme, a seat at the table?
Hmm. Yeah, Apollo is such a beautiful film. I think often what we're looking for in our stories are stories that are authentic. So, the director is one of the subjects in the film. So, we know that their story is being told authentically because they have a voice, on the directing team. So that's really important. And then what really like moved us about Apollo was how nuanced the representation was. I think with trans representation in particular, we often see a very flat narrative where, we have a family that is totally rejecting their trans kid or, but in Apollo there is nuance and there's growth and it's not perfect, but it's still really positive and it's just really real to the experience. And then I don't want to spoil it for you, but the ending is just beautiful. You know, the whole film is a love letter to their child, Apollo. You know, the parents are telling like Apollo the story of like how they came to be and just that, you know, the love and the care that they put into the film is just so palpable. Yeah, it's a very moving film, very, very heartwarming. So can highly recommend.
That's awesome. And I wanted to ask a question, as your team is pretty much, you've probably reviewed pretty much everything that's going to be there. What is like an overall message or theme that you want people that are, whether they're there in person or during the online portion of the festival, what is something that you all hope that they will take away?
I really want people to feel like they belong, that they matter, that their voices are important, and that they have community.
Wow.
Okay.
And oh, go ahead, Zachary. You about to say something?
Yes, it's to piggyback off of you a little bit. We're living in a moment where queer and particularly trans visibility has increased dramatically, but so has political backlash. Now, does that make a queer film festival more important now, or does it change what its responsibilities should be?
It's a great question, and I don't know if I have, a singular answer to it. I think, our responsibilities do change at different times, and I think we do as a team feel a different kind of responsibility to members of our community that are under attack. Um, yeah, it's interesting being a visibly trans person in a leadership position at an organization as well, and like how my own identity like intersects with, yeah, my work. And I think we're often in Canada feeling, well, at least we're not in the States. We have this kind of like, well, at least it's not as bad as, but we kind of
Wow.
forget the places in Canada where it is pretty horrific and that trans care
Wow.
is being taken away from trans youth in places like Alberta, which is, just across the border. So I think there is still a lot of work that we need to do in Canada to make sure our rights are not being taken away. And then there's also, a lot of care that we need to extend to our trans siblings in the States who are facing, yeah, additional challenges.
Wow. I think that is so important. And as we're, wrapping up, are there any final thoughts that you would like to share with the listening audience that we have?
Ooh, any final thoughts? I think something that feels important to end on is like, I feel like there is such political value in cultivating joy and celebration, even in really challenging, tough times where it feels hopeless. And I think it can sometimes feel like frivolous to, you know, be celebrating or trying to gather. But I think it is actually very, very important that we are continuing to build like positive community connections because that's what's going to keep us safe when times get tough.
Wow. And where can people find out more about the Vancouver Queer Film Festival? Where can they follow? When is it? What information can you share with our audience that will probably love to learn more about it?
Yes. Okay, so we are in person September 10 to 20, and then online September 21 to 27. And the films are available online all across BC. We're in person in Vancouver, different venues across the city. Tickets are sliding scale. They start at $7. I think we're one of the cheapest ticket prices in the city very deliberately because we want to be accessible. So yeah, come out. It's gonna be great. And I think that's it. Oh, outonscreen.com is our website if you want to look up the program.
Awesome. Awesome. Eli, this was such an amazing conversation. We are so grateful that you were here to just
Yeah.
share some of this insight with us, um, to an audience that wants to see, just equity and equality in cinema, media, the festival space. We have a lot of people that tune in to this side of the world, if you will. And so, thank you for opening up this conversation, for expressing how you feel and how this media and representation of the LGBTQIA and queer communities is so important. I don't know if this could have been any better. I think you really did some amazing dialogue here with us today. And so thank you for that. Zachary, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I'm going to say this. Finish this sentence for me. The future of queer cinema is.
Mm,
That's
Unlimited.
yes,
wow.
yes,
That's
yes,
a strong ending right there.
yes.
Wow,
Uh,
that's incredible. Well, thank you so much to everyone that's viewing around the world on whatever platform that you are streaming or watching on. Please tune in or travel to the Vancouver Queer Film Festival or just to watch it online. The dates are in person from September 10th to the 20th, and it is online from September 21st to the 27th. So please tune in, and we hope that you enjoy what you see there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.